And in a way, that's kind of what this thing is with 10th Avenue. To say, you know, we want in place certain kinds of permits and regulations that that help to control this segment of the population that could be potentially disruptive. Disruptive because perhaps they don't have the resources that they need to live lives of dignity and well-being. And so we feel threatened, we feel fearful. And so there's this response of control, of management, and so on. And that's why I think we have to resist that. Because as communities called to solidarity, our stance is alongside. Our stance is arm in arm. It's not over against. And we're going to make sure you behave yourselves. It's how do we stand together. Now, these are the kind of, the call is to solidarity, that standing side by side. But there's obstacles to that call. Both social economic structures, but maybe also things we've internalized, sort of perspectives that seep in within us, that come with our entitlement or our privilege. Then if that's the case, how do we move beyond this? How do we move past the obstacles, past the barriers? And I think we have to find places of collocation, places where we share space together, where our lives overlap. And that has to be very intentional. Given the ways in which our lives can spin off into their own isolated kind of circles, then to be together means an intentional move to be together, an intentional response of standing alongside one another. And standing alongside one another means that there's not a posture of superiority and inferiority, that one is above the other, that because of my privilege I can tell you how you should get your life in order, and so on. But that together we stand and we listen to one another, and we listen to experiences and lives of, say, tragedy or affliction or trauma or exclusion, and we begin to understand that perhaps the perspective we've inhabited has eliminated from view an alternative perspective, this perspective of the excluded. When we listen, it's not only listening to personal stories of tragedy, but it's also trying to understand the historical context or the social, economic, and political context within which those stories are embedded, and how it is that those structures have perhaps molded or shaped or configured those experiences. For example, at the squat, most of the people who are there with us from among the homeless population are Aboriginal. And that whole history of the experience of colonization and residential schools and so on that has led to this fallout of being way overrepresented among the homeless population or way overrepresented within the prison population and so on. So we see this history that plays into it. We seek understanding in these ways. But then partly also it means that to stand side by side and to gain understanding is also to perhaps relinquish our entitlement, to think that we know best or we know better, or that somehow we're the ones who should be making decisions for other people's lives. How do we do this where we stand and journey together, side by side, see the structures of exclusion and inequality, and then take up the struggle? So it's more than just solidarity with the poor out of a sense of, say, individualized compassion, or even a collective compassion, but it's also solidarity with the poor in order to eliminate poverty, in order to eliminate and eradicate those structures that create this increasing gap of exclusion or economic inequality. How do we honor friendship? How do we journey together? How do we create a community that involves recognition of one another? And this might mean a kind of relinquishment of our own privileged status, a relinquishment of our own resources, a willingness to be open-handed and share those resources together, share meals, to share other kinds of resources, to deepen a sense of community, that our well-being is linked to the well-being of people who have been excluded. And to share this struggle for social justice, to tie our own lot in with the lot of those who are poor. Okay, so what does that mean? What does it mean for faith communities? How do we divest ourselves of our resources for the sake of the well-being of others? How do we work towards the eradication or the elimination of poverty, not its perpetuation? And this is then always creates a kind of disturbing element to it, I think. For example, when we have an out-of-the-cold meal over at Grandview, I always think to myself, what I really want to say is, I'm really glad you're here. I hope no one's here next week. Because I hope everyone's got a place. I hope everyone's got sufficient resources. I'd like to come to your house for a meal. And that's where we should be moving. We can't be satisfied with just offering a meal here or an overnight for 35 people here. We need to be fighting and struggling for resources to be built and given so people can live with dignity, so they can have sufficient. And if that means we go with less, we go with less. This is what we have to do as a community. And of course, this is a tough thing to embrace, particularly within a context of, let's say, a social economic system that always pushes us to have more and to seek more comfort and to seek more resources for ourselves. And we slip into that, you know, I mean, it's just like the air we breathe. So fighting against that and saying we're willing to have less in order for there to be a more just distribution of resources and of power and of decision-making and of community participation and so on. It's not something to be proud of, it seems to me, that we have food banks. That should be something we're ashamed of, that we have to have food banks. Why aren't there sufficient resources for people? And so there we are on the squad. People, you know, wet, who come by soaking wet, freezing cold, and the lot stays empty, year after year after year. And where's the cry? Where's the outcry that this is utterly unacceptable and morally an outrageous situation, and that together we have to struggle for that stance of solidarity, that people are provided with these sorts of basic needs for sort of dignified human existence. And so I think that while we certainly don't want to align with powers that seek to get us on board with sort of initiatives of social control over poor people, we want to take this stance of solidarity with the poor, but it's with the view of eliminating poverty and of opening up communities of inclusion and spaces of mutual life shared together. That's where we need to go. And the struggle is long and it's hard, and it's going to take, it's going to cost us. But that's the squad has been an interesting experience because of for the 15 or 16 of us down there. I think there's been a really great experience of community, of enjoyment together. And it's sort of it's kind of like the possibilities are tasted of what it might be to be a community together of local and mutuality. So this is the challenge: faith communities called to solidarity with the poor. And may we journey that